The Pacers played a playoff game like a playoff game. Come away with a win, 125-108 over the Milwaukee Bucks. Lead by as many as 23 points in the fourth quarter when they both figuratively and literally ran away with the game, in my opinion. Pascal with another ethical 30 ball. We're here to talk about it all. I'm joined by Louis Zatzman, Bucks.com writer, and somebody who I think has chronicled Pascal Siakam over his career quite exquisitely. Also, Samson Folk, again, one of my favorite basketball writers, also has chronicled Siakam quite exquisitely over his career. First things first, I will direct it to Samson. Would you say that last night's game was pretty great?
Hey, that's pretty good. It was fun. I was glad to see that the Pacers managed to inject pace into the game. 94 points or 95, whatever they got in game one, isn't acceptable. As I wrote in the piece for the Caitlin Cooper Patreon, the ask isn't for the Pacers to be an elite defense. It's that they survive on defense so that their elite offense can win them games. And we're not talking about, championship contending here. We're talking about winning a first-round series. And they should be able to meet those terms, at least for a few games. And they did. Game two. First win since April 27th, 2018. Back to the Sabonis-Oladipo days.
And an interesting comparison, given what we talked about on the prior pod, in which during that series, Miles struggled very much in the short roll. And this game, their first win in many years, did not struggle so much in the short roll. But let's start with Pascal Siakam, since both of you are most familiar with him. Second straight game, 30 points. He's leading all players in the playoffs in scoring. How sustainable do you think this is? Looked very easy. Was it easy? I'll start with Louis.
I thought it was as easy as the Bucks could have made it. Milwaukee's game plan has pretty clearly been limit Halliburton, or at least let his passivity dictate his, let it come to the fore. And that worked in game one. They continued it largely in game two with a couple tweaks. Obviously, they blitzed more and switched less, but Siakam has been their less important target on the defensive side, and he just ate him up in both games as a result. I expect the Bucks to try other things to try to make his job harder. Nothing's easy in the NBA, of course. He's done it against lots of different defenders, different coverages, just by virtue of it being a playoff defensive game plan. Stuff's going to switch around all the time, but the Bucks didn't do much to make it harder than it was. Just baseline.
Do you think that they have the personnel currently to make it harder than it is?
A little bit. I don't think they have the personnel to turn off the tap without Giannis, or even with him, but they have the personnel to make it harder. Yeah.
When I saw how he scored, my mind is like a lot of it is coming against a flat defense. And he's not giving them opportunities to load up through scheme. This was a big advantage with the Pacers picking up that pace, is that the faster you go, the defense gets a little bit sloppier. It's harder to time up where you're stepping into gaps. It's harder to set the defense fully, and Pascal pushing early or getting the ball early in these offensive possessions as the pace was jumped up, I think led to more cracks for him to kind of punch into. But there were of the baskets he scored, maybe 3 or 4 came from him running a play with a screener. Most of this was him playing freely in the offense or doing early work to get an early seal. And outside of having a better primary, I'm not sure what they want to be doing as far to take that away. That's what I'm wondering about, because so much of it is obviously you're going to beat Pat Connaughton when you get low post position, or Damian Lillard for that spin. But as far as having Brook Lopez playing goalie and playing quite low, and Pascal's still knifing his way to the rim with help there, what is the response? I think Caitlin or Lewis, if you were trying to concoct a way, what would it be?
First of all, let me give you a trivia question. If you had to guess, if I set the line at 5.5, would you take the over or the under on how many Bucks players Siakam scored against yesterday? How many different Bucks players? 5.5. Over or under?
Over, yeah.
Yeah. So 6 different players that he scored against, mainly out of a lot of the things that you just said. Like, I think that all of it came pretty organically. Some of it was against zone. I think the Bucks ran 6 possessions of zone. It wasn't a whole lot, but
was that the? Okay, never mind. Because I was actually going to bring up that the play we talked about on the last podcast where TJ didn't make that stampede cut. There was a play where Pascal, it wasn't a stampede cut, but he cut against the weak side zone when Tyrese was snaking middle in a way that TJ just didn't. And Middleton gambled and there was a layup there. But yeah, I was thinking, was that zone? But it was. Wait.
No, Middleton, your answer to Samson's question.
Portis, Lopez, Connaughton, Dame, Bev.
Jay Crowder a couple times.
Yes, right.
Unless, Lewis, do you want to hop right in there? Did you
have
something you wanted to build off of there? Because I haven't.
A lot of the organic stuff you can't take away, obviously, without putting holes in your defense that you don't want to do in other ways. But I think they could take away some things. Like, there were some really, really easy answers to some baskets they didn't try. Like, he went 1 for 2 on above the break threes, I think. And after he hit the one, Milwaukee started closing out a lot higher. Why? And then he drove past guys and got easy layups. Like, just keep making him take above the break threes. Push his catches higher and higher. He got a lot in the corner, which I think is something that is organic, but try to shift him, right? Shift where he's getting his touches. He had a post up against Lillard where Lopez literally was there and then just wandered away. Like, scram switch on the ball. That's fine. Lillard's right there. Just Lillard can dart out, let Lopez take that. There were some, and I think this is indicative of not just the game plan against Siakam. There were some really boneheaded plays from Milwaukee on both ends where it was like, they're not treating it like the playoffs. It's very lackadaisical. A lot of X outs were just like AJ Green, for example, was just like, I'm just going to walk instead of run. It was weird. And I think maybe you take away 6 points or something from Siakam by virtue of moving a couple possessions along or closing out a little shorter. You're not taking everything away, but it shouldn't be as easy as it was in some situations.
He scored out of almost every play type. I mean, he scored out of the pick and pop against Brook Lopez. Some of the tagging stuff that you're talking about in the corner was coming because of some of what they were doing schematically against the short roll, but bringing up some of the lackadaisical things in that very play that you just mentioned against Brook Lopez. Here we go. Okay, so transition defense. What is transition defense geared to take away, in both of your opinion? Like, at the NBA level, what is transition defense intended to do? What are your main objectives?
No layups.
Samson, what's the main objective of transition defense?
I'm trying to keep the ball above the break to settle the offense. Or if I have defense in the corners, I'm trying to make the ball go to the corner so that it has to go back up above the break again. And they have to start defense with more time off the clock. But basically, I'm trying to slow the ball down and keep it in front of me.
Schematically, I think the basic rules are the closest player to the ball handler is responsible for stopping the ball. The job of the next nearest player, who is ball side, to plug the ball side hit head pass, and the first player back, who is preferably a big, protects the basket first and foremost, and you work out from there. So a lot of this early work stuff, like what is Bobby Portis doing here? If you're the first big back, why are you not protecting the basket while Siakam is just absolutely burying Dame here? Like, there's no effort to do that at all. Ben Shepherd pops out. There's going to be multiple passes around the perimeter. Nobody moves to scram Dame out. Just easy burying of Damian Lillard multiple times. Then this one, camera pan closeout from Siakam on the Dame 3. Can't even see where he is. And this is the one you're talking about, Lewis. So he gets all the way down there. There actually is some activity where he loses the ball for a bit. And then you can just watch Brook Lopez. He actually goes under with Aaron Nesmith moving up the arc. And they just leave Dame there on a complete island. Then he doesn't double down or smash down from Nesmith until Siakam spins around him.
Yeah.
Like, some wild stuff here. Pat Connaughton, what are you doing? What the buck is this? I really don't know. And the most fast breakable thing you can do in the NBA is fall on the ground after a missed layup.
Yep.
And Dame is trotting back. And then again, I don't know how many times, the Ben Shepherd double clutch layup in transition that he got, that was a pretty key moment when they were running up the score. Brook Lopez is just backpedaling. Bobby Portis in a backpedal. Nobody turn and sprint. And Dame's just stuck here with Siakam, where I actually do want to bring up this play and show it to both of you because this is something in alignment that the Pacers have gone to a lot. The first time that I noticed them do it was when they got a win over the Detroit Pistons. But when you put Miles over there on the weak side corner and Tyrese is the ball handler, they throw it to Siakam at the elbow. Andrew immediately relocates to the dunker. Look how wide the entry point is for Siakam to be able to attack here when you have Tyrese and Miles as the two people spacing around him instead of like just playing normal 5-out where Andrew would be up there above the break. And then they do actually crowd him a bit, and that's when Miles makes this three. This was the point in which I knew that, like, Samson, you're going to remember that the one podcast that the two of us did together, remember when I said that watching Siakam with the Raptors was like sliding a piece of paper under a door, and that was one of my favorite things to watch about him? Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to slide through the door anymore. He gets to walk right through it. So, like, I don't know why Tyrese set the screen in this Pistons game with Asar Thompson then switching on to Siakam. But he bobbles the ball here twice. And I was like, oh, this is very telling of something they could do in the playoffs because he lost the ball twice, but he never actually lost it because nobody's clogging those gaps at all. The next one where it's Fontecchio. So Fontecchio, and then this is like Siakam's classic, I'm going to be staccato and languid all at the same time until he gets to the rim. But I made a video about this at the time, and I was like, oh, that's going to be a playoff solution for the Pacers at some point. And lo and behold, it was.
I think he had 5 shots from that location in the second half. And the biggest one is that he got to gallop to a 2-foot jump stop against Brook late and without a dig. That's a super, super big deal. And like, that's the thing when you look at Pascal and his shot chart and short mid-range versus like medium mid-range and that not being, those aren't the sexiest shots as far as like efficiency, but he's one of the best players operating that. His office, in the piece I wrote, he was delivering out a bunch of billables. If you're going to leave him with space there, it's probably going to be tough. They're not the easiest shots, but this is what since he had the tough bubble series, basically his career's work has been carving out this space for himself, and that space is now available to him.
I adore the inverted spacing. And I think sometimes it becomes very casual to be like, 5-out is best in the NBA for the Pacers and especially for Siakam. By putting a guard in the dunker spot, that opens up a lot for him because Siakam's game isn't really about blow-bys to begin with. Like a lot of times it is just been, at least with the Pacers, him rising up for mid-range over the top of people and it just creates a much wider gap. But I do want to pivot to Lewis because I read your piece that you wrote at Bucks.com about, I think you titled it In the Mud, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you wrote in there, and you can see from the numbers on cleaning the glass as well, that Milwaukee actually was better under Doc Rivers at limiting transition frequency for a time. And the Pacers didn't score a lot in transition in game one. It was like 72.9 points per 100 transition plays. In this game, it was over 140 points per 100 transition plays. And their transition frequency was 18.9%. That's higher than the best team in the NBA. So kind of the idea that, when the playoffs happen, the pace slows down. The exact opposite of that cliche ended up bearing out. So from your perspective, you watched way more Milwaukee than I have. What were they doing to limit that transition frequency under Doc Rivers, and why didn't that pan out in this game?
So mostly they were doing everything to limit transition frequency. Like their offense and their defense was geared around that in the regular season. They didn't crash. They always had their alignment set last man back. They were really aware of what needed to happen, basically. In this game, there was some bad luck for sure. Like there was one make. And okay, so one of the goals in this series, I thought, was going to be more offensive rebounding for Milwaukee, which they're terrible at, but Indiana's a really bad defensive team, and they needed to win the possession battle somehow, and they just can't force turnovers. So they were going to crash. They did in this game more than they did in the first game. They had some bad luck where there were a couple bobble balls on the rim, and they sent 2 bodies to pick it up, and then it dropped. And then, okay, you have 2 guys under the rim, they're inbounding, and then Indiana scored after a make. That's bad luck. I get the idea of crashing there. They also just whined to the refs after a bunch of misses. The other thing that happened that was really, really poor was Brook Lopez missed all his twos, maybe all, not all. He had that one left-handed dunk, but he missed a lot of driving floaters and little push shots.
He was 2 of 6, if I remember.
Yeah,
inside the arc,
and
6 of 7 from downtown. Holy smokes!
Yeah, that was amazing. So missing layups is already the most likely thing to start transition, but your big defender being the one who misses the layup he is now the furthest one from the defensive end on transition. And there were a couple times he thought he got pushed in the back and sort of turned to talk before he got back, which is adding even more beats of pace before he gets. It was bad luck, bad strategy, bad offense, and then bad effort. It was just terrible.
In transition, you're not going to buddy up. I understand that. You're not defending your matchup. You're defending the ball. But how many times when we were just watching that clip of reels, are they just willingly allowing Dame to get cross-matched onto Siakam? Like, not even just the idea of the early bully gets the ball. It's like you're literally just in no man's land allowing that to be the cross match. And that was kind of what I liked about your piece too, is because you talked about how much more they were isolating and how that was limiting how many cross matches they were giving up. In this game, it was just tons of cross matches, which was really to the Pacers' advantage, obviously, with the way they want to play.
And the other thing they did in this game, they did not play static. They ran almost twice as many off-ball cuts as Indiana. They didn't isolate as much as they would have liked to. They ran more pick and rolls. They passed more than I thought they should have. They actually played sort of modern offense, which hurt their defense a lot. Like, playing in the mud puts both teams in the mud. Equal and opposite reaction, right? If you don't pass the ball on offense, if everyone is sitting around the arc not moving, your transition defense will benefit. And they played not muddy enough on offense, which made their defense start from the back foot.
How much do you think them not playing muddy on offense was a product of some of the increased trapping against Damian Lillard? Because, Lewis, you say that about the offensive rebounding too. Like, I tweeted that very early on in the game, that I'm like, if the Pacers keep having to double Dame, with them being as weak as they are as a defensive rebounding team, that should actually be to the Bucks' benefit, because I've seen it many times where those gravitational waves, when they become outnumbered, end up leading to a lot of offensive rebounds for their opponent, and that didn't necessarily completely bear out. But
this is a battleground of the series, as both you guys laid out in like your pre-series coverage. This is one of the big. I know Draymond he talked about it on his podcast, like, Indiana is an 82-game team, not a 16-game team. They play fast. They want to go. They don't play defense. That's the crux of what he's saying. But the reason why teams want to play fast is that it's not just like push, play fast, easier shots. It's that you make other teams consider how much they want to crash. It's not two sides of the floor. It's one floor. And as teams learn when to push and how to push in the playoff context as well, you can change some things on the margins. And I'll be interested to see for game 3 what type of balance the Bucks try to strike, because this is something that, Lewis and I covered very intimately from the Raptors. Play more ISO, crash the offensive glass, and try and strike a really fine balance of being able to eat on the boards offensively and still get back and still be principled on defense. It's tough. It was a younger, bouncier team when the Raptors did it. When the Knicks do it, they have a lot of energy players as well. The Bucks don't. The Bucks might not have the personnel to strike that balance. So some advantages that you push create disadvantage. Some advantages that you push are just advantage. This is what we're seeing with the Pacers and pick and roll versus drop and pick and roll versus blitz. Do the Bucks have the guys to go switch a whole series? These are the things that you have to find, the wins and the losses. So I'm very interested for that. I have one question for both you guys. I thought that the chin series that the Bucks were running for Dame coming out of it, pretty damn good. I want to know, Lewis, how often they did this during the regular season. And Caitlin, I'm sure you remember there was 6 possessions where they ran it. How would you like to see the Pacers defend that going forward? I guess we'll start with Lewis.
The chin series is that Horns alignment.
Horns chin. Dame is this one of the horns. Pat or somebody else Chris comes off, and he comes out of the horns alignment to get the handoff above the break. Yeah. He hit 2 threes out of it. Took 4 threes out of it though.
Yeah. They ran it when they needed a bucket. I'm pretty sure that was the alignment on the Dame 3 early in the year, the handoff with Giannis. I would need to check the film. I don't have the memory that you have, but they ran it now and then, but it wasn't. I think 4 a game would be on the high end. Probably one of the higher games, but it was definitely something they turned to in clutch time.
Now that I paused this, that the listener doesn't know, to go review these and look at them. The first time it occurs when Neesmith's the player guarding Middleton at the opposite horn, and Dame's going to come get that handoff high to curl into the three. I think you pretty clearly just have Neesmith switch out to Dame, and you guard it that way and have it would be Andrew Nembhard peeling back to Middleton. Then in the second half, when it's Bobby, I think you just got to blitz it. You got to expect Miles to be up above the level and get the ball to Dame's hand.
Noted.
Did you have a different opinion of that?
No, I had a curiosity, and sometimes I like to hear what more intelligent people think about certain things than myself. So
better go find that other intelligent person.
Yeah, they got nice shots out of it, I thought. Yeah. Dame missed missed 2 threes. One of them, he was trying to get fouled. He got a layup that Turner tracked from behind as well in the fourth, which was part of that collapsing run. Yeah, in general, I think Indiana did not make defense as easy as it should have been on Dame. I think that's probably the broader and more important point here.
So you mean that you don't think that Aaron Neesmith should be in drop coverage when he's defending the screener against Damian Lillard?
Or going over 34 feet from the rim?
We'll get to that later. Lewis Ferry did a segment on that after game one. But to put a bow on the Siakam transition extended conversation here, I teased and said Siakam expected field goal percentage last night was 76, or effective field goal percentage, I should rephrase, 76%. Do you want to take a guess at what his shot quality, his expected field goal percentage was according to Second Spectrum? Do you think he way outpaced the expected? Obviously, I mean, he's 76%, but
I think.
What do you think his shot quality was?
Percentage was 47%.
Yeah, I think it was probably plus 20. I'm going to go plus 21. I'm going to say it was 56 or 55. Yeah, 55.
Yeah, so it was 53%. So it was plus 22.7.
I'm used to looking at this expected database. I know generally.
The fact of the matter is, like, 76 is obviously otherworldly. Like, that's higher than Giannis during the regular season. That being said, 53%, that's like what Scotty did during the regular season. That's what Bam did during the regular season. So his shot quality was also incredibly high, which speaks to what we're talking about, that a lot of this was easy for Siakam, and then he just absolutely obliterated it beyond what the easiness of it was.
The mid-range fadeaway touch thing he does, databases hate and Siakam loves. That goes a long way.
This is like, if Siakam was doing this and he was a more popular player, we would have already restarted I thought the mid-range, I thought it was dead. But since Pascal isn't like a super popular player and he's not one of the bag players of the discourse merchants, we're not there. But he's certainly been good enough to be like, to restart that, especially if this goes on for a full series, but we're not quite there yet. We'll see.
Next question, piggybacking off of that, which I think provides an interesting dichotomy. If Giannis plays in game 3 or whenever Giannis plays, is he guarding Siakam, or are you putting him on Miles Turner to prevent what we're seeing in some segments later on?
Wait, can I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
Pascal is not Giannis's ideal check. Giannis is very, very good. But I do see this sentiment that they're like, once Giannis comes back. Mm-hmm. Giannis would have trouble with Pascal. And that doesn't mean like Giannis isn't a very, very strong defender. But Pascal is not the ideal check for Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Answer the question. You dodged it. Will he guard Pascal?
I don't think so.
Will he guard Miles? So you think he'll still guard Miles?
I think so, yes.
Lewis, same question.
Same answer. Yeah, I think he will guard Miles so that their pick and roll defense is optimized against Haliburton. But Lopez, I thought, has had some okay possessions against Siakam. And historically, Lopez has been very successful against Siakam.
Lopez is good. Like,
it's all the other moments, right? Siakam is killing everyone else. And he got some against Lopez, like, for sure. He got him a couple times. But if Lopez is contesting 15 of those shots from Siakam rather than 5, I think that's fine. Milwaukee's got to live with that.
Can I also say It's something, Lewis is well aware of. We talked about a little bit before the series started. The Portis-Siakam rivalry, that is like one of the underrated rivalries of the past few years. They get into it every single game they play. I love those.
I think Bobby has one of those with almost every single player he plays against, though, correct? Like Siakam's just one of the many, I think.
Yeah, that might be true. Bobby might be carrying more of the weight there. But Pascal actually entertains it with Bobby, maybe because they're similar in size. But that's been really fun. Just so cleaning the glass is a quick thing. Has Pascal is 11 of 13 at the rim, 9 of 16 in the short mid-range, and 64% from the long mid-range. 7 of 11 from the long mid-range, 9 of 16 from the short mid-range. But the short mid-range, which is where the bulk of these shots are coming from, it's 56% versus, we have a couple years of him shooting 49% in short mid-range. He's very good there.
So I guess the point is if both of you think that the defensive assignments are going to stay the same, then is this sustainable?
I think this is kind of what we talked about at the top. It's sustainable to the tune of like 26 points per game, I think. I think it ranges from like 21 all the way up to 40. Like, I think the floor of how he's being guarded is he goes north of 20 every single game, and the shooting percentage is probably going to float around 50%. Right. This is what Pacers fans have seen from Pascal, mostly. Mm-hmm. In fact, this is what Raptors fans saw a lot of this season, too, is just like not a lot of games below 50%. The floor of the game is very comfy. It can start to like balloon up if that short mid-range is really, really popping off. And I think the scoring and being Indiana's leading scorer is definitely, that's going to be stay the same, static. It just doesn't balloon when he's shooting efficient from everywhere. I guess we'll see.
The other danger is if you do say, Giannis, you take Siakam, everyone dig, stunt, get your arms in there, you're opening up a whole world of pain with Miles open jumpers. You're letting Halliburton drive now, which has largely been absent, even despite the success in game 2. You're letting guys like, Ben Shepherd and Obi Toppin get loose in those, like easy read drives that they've been quite good at this year. I think if the Bucks have to choose Siakam Cooks, we make Indiana's offense look different, or we let them get to their regular season like half court whirring machine, but take Siakam out of it. It's a pretty easy choice to let Siakam get 30.
I think I would word it as, I think that the shots that he's getting are sustainable based on what we've seen. Whether he continues to hit them at another worldly clip remains to be seen, but we've seen him do this fairly often with the Pacers. Moving on, though, another gift from Canada, a guard that we didn't talk about in the prior episode when we were talking about guards. Andrew Nembhard, 20 points, 8 of 11 shooting. Since I have two of my favorite Canadians on this podcast, did you have a favorite Andrew Nembhard moment in this game? And what did you think of him overall?
Fourth quarter, he hit the 2 fadeaway jumpers that OG Anunoby has been trying to hit for 4 years. The get middle, escape dribble, half spin into it, fader. It rocks to see that happening. I love it very much. And he's so gritty, man. There's something about guys who chase and grind on defense. I believe the terminology is he chews rocks, something like that. Andrew Nembhard, we've been talking about him for a long time, Caitlin. I've been a fan of Nembhard for quite some time, spoken very highly of him in all facets of coverage on my own or yours. And also in the last episode, I said I would rely on Nembhard even more than they did last game and see how that goes. And I don't know if it's a comfy position to rely on him, but I mean, he popped off. So that's really nice. He was great. Hell yeah, Nemby.
There's a lot of fun narrative angles about him doing this in this game against this opponent, because I don't know how closely you both watched or remember the in-season tournament game when the Pacers played them in the semifinals in Las Vegas. Nembhard was out of the rotation at that point in time. He played 2 minutes in the first half of that game. And they weren't, I didn't necessarily think poor quality minutes. Just at that point in time, TJ had kind of usurped him as the backup point guard. He ended up playing 11 for the game. And in the second half, he ended up being fairly important to what they were doing against Milwaukee's zone. And then also he just made some, really wonderful defensive plays, both on and off the ball. But for him to do that against the same opponent and what you're saying there, Samson, like there was a play very early on where they run like an Iverson screen to get Nembhard off of it. Then it's an empty side ball screen. And typically that gets reversed with a boomerang pass to Tyrese for him to go off a step-up screen. But because Patrick Beverley's been so aggressive at face guarding and denying him once Tyrese gets off the ball, they couldn't make that pass. And I was thinking to myself, like, how much can the Pacers rely on Andrew? Like, this is really putting the onus on him. And they ended up running a couple different wrinkles out of that play. But just a lot of good playmaking moments from him and a lot of little details. He's, as Samson says about, I've seen in his coverage, Nembhard is in many ways the little things king in addition to the 20 points he scored. But I do want to get Lewis's thoughts. Did you have a favorite Andrew Nembhard moment from this game?
So I have trouble. I'm sure you guys probably find it easier, but I have trouble picking up scheme for both teams in a game. When I'm watching a game live, I can catch what, one team is running on both ends, but it's really hard to see both. So obviously I'm focusing on the Bucks. And so when I saw Nembhard initiating, especially in the first quarter, he had a lot more initiation. My mind was, oh, this is because of Dame, right? I'm thinking from Milwaukee's perspective. And I thought Dame held up to the extent that they went back to other initiation styles. Right, tried to go back to Tyrese a little bit more. And that first quarter run was actually like the only time Milwaukee really won a stretch of the game. And so I thought Nembhard might have been overtaxed a little bit in all of those. You guys are both like, this is way off. And again, you would have seen this closer than I did. I thought he was overtaxed a little bit and asking him to be, okay, let's get Dame on the ball and see what happens here. But man, when he was attacking second side or cutting or, driving, like keeping the chains moving, he was just killing Milwaukee.
Fortunately for us, I've prepared a highlight reel. So here we are. Siakam and Nembhard actually playing pretty well off of each other. And I love this play because for once the Pacers have actually targeted Damian Lillard by using Nembhard as the screener and then having him pop out against Dame to put the ball on the floor and get all the way to the rim and finish. And just to kind of put that in perspective, something I talked to Samson about was back when the Pacers played the Knicks earlier this season. They got into the fourth quarter. Jalen Brunson is guarding Buddy Hield. And this was kind of probably when I should have known that the Buddy Hield era was coming to an end because not once did they use Buddy Hield as an inverted screener to get Siakam to go against Jalen Brunson. Instead, Siakam was screening for Nembhard, and then that was just switching Precious Achiuwa out to the ball. And Nembhard really couldn't do much against that switch. So that was kind of a big moment. And then what Samson mentioned there, Siakam running two-man action here with Nembhard gets that switch against Bobby Portis. And to see Nembhard isolating in the fourth quarter of a playoff game and actually getting to his shot and hitting that fadeaway, like this is a moment that I doubt either of you watched this game against Denver. But when Nembhard came back he had a back injury midway through the season. And when he came back, he was very stiff. His handle was affected by that, but also his handle can be a little bit limited. It's something that he's had to work on a lot this season. So like here he's being guarded by Aaron Gordon. He's not even going to try to use that Gortat screen, goes into that same spin move. And you can see that he's pretty loose with it when he has to spin back to his left. And now this is basically like an air ball fade away in that same moment. So a good development stride from him has just been his handle overall, because like here he is against the blitz and you can actually see that he navigates that, uses a little bit of a hesitation to get Bobby up above the screen, gets into the tight space and gets into the rim again. And that was when he kind of clocked Patrick Beverley. Like to see him, like the development of the handle overall, because they're like, Samson, you mentioned this on the last pod when you're like, hey, Tyrese, sometimes defenses want you to do something and stars in the playoffs are like, that's what you want me to do. I'm going to do something else. This is Nembhard actually using his handle to evade the trap and make a pass out of it, using eye manipulation to get Obi Toppin open in the corner. This isn't an assist because Obi doesn't make that shot. But I just thought a lot of really wonderful playmaking from Nembhard overall. Now they're going to use Tyrese as the screener, and he's just going at Beverley again, getting into that mid-range area. He just moseys to his spots really well overall.
There is this thing. Now, I'm not saying he's Brunson, but when I watch Nembhard drive, play off of 2, the handle has to get better, yes, but what he intuitively does with his body to strength create, to use like his footwork and the finesse that has to catch up, it makes me clench my teeth. I'm like, he plays with that, and that's, even though it didn't end up in a bucket, like that move to get into Beverly is so good. That's the kind of stuff that it's like the playoff environment. The physical players definitely get more leverage, and they get to like step their games up on the margins all across the court. It's not just defensively where Nembhard is physical. It's on offense too, where you're going to like, you take it to that next level. He is so good at like as a driving guard that watching him progress, especially like his mentality getting downhill, very impressive. This is, you and I have been, well, a lot of people are very high on Nembhard, probably for this reason. You see enough of these drives, you wonder what it looks like when the finesse stuff really gets to that next level. He's a treat to watch. He's a real grinder out there. I adore how he plays.
Yeah, at the time when he was having those struggles and came back from the back injury, he wasn't getting to that float dribble, which you use Jalen Brunson. I use Jamal Murray a lot because he floats when he comes off those picks to square his hips, and then he buys himself an extra second of time to make those reads. But if you had asked me, like, which one of the point guards for the Pacers will be evading some of these traps or splitting the traps with their handle, I would not have answered Andrew Nembhard, even though I do like those specific moments of him. So I just thought that was a pretty good development moment overall. But I am also going to be self-indulgent here because I do have 2 defensive clips to show you. So here he is against Dame. This was actually a pretty good moment here. So Dame actually rejects that screen. Nembhard still beats him to a spot, closes out again to contest that particular 3. I thought that was impressive. And here's the self-indulgent one. Samson, look what he's doing here. This is magic. You can go under screens at half court and actually get in front of Dame. It's possible. And now, even though he gets beat, Siakam's starting to peel off of somebody at the high side, and then Tyrese can make a read in the passing lane. All of those things are possible, it appears. I wasn't sure after game 1, but
Ben Shepherd,
like it can happen.
If we're not getting to Ben just like 20 seconds, defense is important. He brought it. We like talked about Ben a decent amount when we were talking about like Raptors Pacers and how good, like he's had some tremendous moments. Ben Shepherd as a guy like coming in, and it's just a couple shots. He's hitting the 1-3, and we talked about the layup earlier, the double clutch finishing on the opposite side. But what he's brought to the defensive end is like paramount to Indiana's success there. He was really, really great last night.
Can you think of many defenders with quicker feet than Ben Shepherd?
I watch the Raptors, so I haven't seen much of that, to be honest with you.
Is that allowed? Are you allowed to have quick feet on the defensive end?
Would you like to compare Ben Shepherd at the point of attack to Bruce Brown at the point of attack?
I'm taking Ben.
Would you allow me a slight basketball aside in general from what I just talked about going under on those logo screens? Because I was going to do it on the prior pod, but I didn't say something. I think that a big part of what I would be looking for if I was a team in terms of like a defensive skill that can actually really enhance your defense is finding defenders who can both go under and surge out of picks. I think that I cannot prove that it is causation, but there is a correlation between defenses that go under the most picks per 100 possessions also being top defenses. So Orlando and Minnesota, top 3, and going under screen. So top defenses.
There is kind of this funny conception that like going under is the lazy defense. And I don't think it is necessarily, especially like it's a different form of pursuit, but it's still a pursuit. You're still in a chase of sorts, and you have to go, like, if you're going over the pick, it's like getting over the top, climb it, and then going downhill. But under is like a different type of climb, sprinting uphill, getting back downhill, getting sideways. If you have a guy who can really defend doing that, as you say, go under and surge, that's a big deal to me. And when I play that guy in pickup, I'm bothered. Like a really good guy who does lock and trail, I'm like, okay, I can handle this. Under and pursuit, feverishly, fervently trying to like meet me everywhere as he dips and dodges around a screen. Tough.
My question about the best defenses going under is that a cause effect flaw? Because are they going under because they're a good team, or are they a good team because they're going under? Right? Already good defenses might have the ability to put in more defensive game plans rather than working on themselves. And so they would say, this is our opponent, going under will help. Whereas a team like the Raptors this past season don't really put in scheme. They're just like, we need to work on defensive fundamentals. And so I wonder which is the cause, which is the effect between defensive success and going under.
Let's talk about the two types of defenders that Samson just described, honestly, because like Jalen Brunson, for instance, goes under on a lot of picks, and he has like a superpower for going under on the pick and then falling down and baiting the screener into committing offensive fouls. Like he's picked up a ton of charge calls this way. And some degree, like I'm not going to call that lazy, but it is just like, hey, you know what? I can probably duck under this, and if I can fall backwards, maybe I can bait a foul here. But then there's Jaden McDaniels at the other end of that spectrum. And like that guy's the king of the underworld. Like he's going to go under and he's still going to have the link to get back out. I watched him do this against Tyrese. And because, as you both have seen in the playoffs, because Tyrese is not a shoot first player, it was very effective. So
yeah, they got KD, but we got Jaden McDaniels. You know,
Lou Dort also, like I've seen him go under 3 picks in a row against Tyrese and be able to get back out from under there. So like the top 10 players in going under picks: Jalen Brunson, Jalen Suggs, Deuce McBride, Jaden McDaniels, Kobe White, Caleb Martin, Lou Dort, Drew Holiday, Alex Caruso.
There you go.
That's a lot of, I know we don't curse, but MFers in that group.
There's meat on that bone.
Yeah. They got a stew going.
I think that there's a story that could come out of this. I really do. And now I've told it to YouTube and the internet, so probably a bigger website's going to write it. But I appreciate everybody for indulging my opinion on going under on more screens. But contrasting back to what I said about Nembhard and evading some of the traps with his handle versus Tyrese getting off the ball very quickly, very telling stat from this game. The Milwaukee Bucks blitzing Tyrese a lot more frequently. The Indiana Pacers, Tyrese only scores 9 points? I don't have the box score in front of me. I think he has 9 points. But the Pacers as a team, when he gets blitzed, scored 2 points per chance when he got blitzed. So general thoughts on the blitzing of Tyrese. Will the Bucks stick with this? Why did it work so much better in game 2? Samson.
Well, Miles Turner just played like significantly better. We talked about it right at the top, but having 3 half-court assists in the first half against the blitz, super big deal. And a couple threes out of that too, right? Like the first one is guys have to cut. You have to support that action, not just Miles flashing into space, being a release valve for Tyrese, but also triggering that cut for like Miles is on the catch. They got the big steps up. You're meeting Miles. Okay. There's a vacancy towards the rim that the guys on the wings or in the corners, they have to be able to absorb a cut that's coming. Make the cut. Force whatever zone is being zoned up to collapse to that cut. And if it doesn't, then you have a layup, which the Pacers got. And if they do collapse to it, you have a 3-point shot. This is baseline basketball. Blitzing puts you in the 4-on-3 disadvantage. We watched the Rockets crash and burn when Russell Westbrook wasn't able to 4-on-3 the Lakers to death when they were blitzing James Harden immediately. Miles Turner was being put in very advantageous positions, was making the right reads out of it. It's not always about being a scorer. Sometimes the defense won't respond in a way that means a pass is there. Sometimes you do have to put a dribble down. You do have to challenge the rim, which is probably more comfortable for Brook than like the big step out. But the biggest difference, Tyrese is going to make the right play out of a blitz. That's fine. Like the correct basketball play, he'll make it. But having Miles confidently survey the floor and go like order of operations, boom, 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 make the right reads, that is what broke the Bucks. And that's kudos to Miles, because as we talked about, this is a linchpin to how the Pacers find success in this action.
And it wasn't just blitzes. I think it was in the second quarter they weaked Halliburton and Miles short rolled. And the second he touched it, he launched along too. And you said earlier, beating a team as a role player.
Really quick, I want to interrupt you and say they weaked the pick and roll, and Miles was also much better at changing the angle of the screen.
Yeah, he rescreened a lot.
Could get back to the right, but continue.
Yeah, he rescreened a lot really well. But in this play, you talked earlier about role players beating a defense by doing what they want versus getting to what you want. And Turner launched this long too. Milwaukee was probably like, praise God. And then he just drilled it. And it was like a 0-second decision. He really detonated a bunch of coverages. And Samson, you described an offense, this is elementary basketball, beating a blitz. Indiana did it, right? They did the cuts, they did the drives, the shooting. You know who didn't? Milwaukee had so many 4-on-3 advantages that just turned into nothing because no one cut, right? It went to Bobby as a release point and he held it, and then everyone recovered. It's like, well, now we have 5 seconds left in the shot clock.
I think that the Pacers played it better than the Bucks, though. Like, just from the defensive standpoint, the biggest difference is, like, are you asking Lopez to step up into space? Are you asking Miles to step up into space, or Pascal? And the Pacers were more willing to, like, let Portis on the catch. Like, Portis came down and made a 12-foot floater that went in. Lopez did too, but Lopez also is more inclined to leak and pop than he is as far as like to get middle. So there's a couple tendency things working there. But the Pacers, and this is like classic like drop basketball, make them live in the mid range. But the Pacers were like, if you're gonna short roll, we want you, the short roller, you to be the scorer. Whereas the Bucks, for some reason on some of these possessions, were like, if we leave Miles here, we're dead. And then they got corner threes, then they got layups out of it. So, yeah.
That's the big decision in the short roll, right? Are you going to tag up and take away that shot? Are you going to and expose access to the rim? Or are you going to stay back and make that player have to make the play? But this game was really a treasure trove of nerdy Caitlin topics. So let's return back to the film because I think there's going to be another fun talking point to look at. So this is from game 1. Same situation where Miles is catching it on the short roll. Chris is up meeting Miles when he slips into that space. But watch the rotations from the other Bucks and also notice where Chris is coming from. So pretty consistently, the Bucks are tagging exclusively with the low man, whether that is on the strong side or the weak side. So in this case, it is actually the strong side. So Chris goes and meets him. Dame sinks down to take the quarter, and then Bobby Portis peels to Andrew Nembhard as the screener rather than trying to pursue and get back in front. So then that takes away both of those options. Miles can't really do anything when he actually has to create against that in game 1. Similarly here, Samson, you brought up this play about him getting caught on his wrong foot and traveling there at the end of the game in game 1. Now look at that by comparison to game 2 and what the Bucks were doing. So this is all of the short roll plays from the Pacers in this game. So again, they're tagging from the low man, but they're absolutely exposing access to the rim. And they're not getting back to cover that cut on the weak side corner cut, which is what you were both talking about with the Bucks not doing that as often. Here we go again. Still low man, whether it's the strong side or the weak side. This is just no man's land. Either you're going to tag up and contest the shot, or you're going to stay back to prevent Andrew from just being able to cut. This is kind of where the Bucks went wrong. I don't think schematically it's necessarily an issue. I think that single side tags are a plague on society, and it's much better to be tagging where you have a numbers advantage. But it's kind of like, do this, but don't do it like this. So Miles makes the right play again. Then
that's a nuts defensive play, by the way. That's like, so it is interesting where you put yourself in a position defensively. You're like, I couldn't stop anything. Yeah. I couldn't stop a thing right now. Like
AJ is not held up, I think, and especially not hitting threes.
Yeah. Then there's also just some weird possessions from the Bucks too, where they're kind of all of the taggers are sinking in at one time, and they seem very uncertain about who's actually going to go. And that one, Tyrese looks it off, so he uses eye manipulation and stares at Miles. They're kind of going to single side tag it there, but both Dame and Chris are off of Aaron. until they end up getting it back to Miles. And then it's a whole nother blitz where they make kind of the similar mistakes again. Dame's the low man, meets him. And then this is where it's the difference from game one. Pat Connaughton needs to go to Aaron. Bobby needs to peel to Tyrese.
Yeah.
This is just a wide open three, which Miles, to his credit, especially when I brought that up earlier about what he was like in that series against Oladipo, he actually does look that off and end up setting Tyrese up for that play. Like, to Samson's point, like he was scanning the options and actually looking to being a lot more poised. And then that's how Siakam's getting open shots, because again, like, why is everybody in the paint ready to tag on that? Like, if Brooks going to be sagging off Siakam anyways, why is Chris also pulled? So here's why single side tags are a plague on society. Chris is all the way over. There's nothing you can do there. There's nobody to slip down. If you're the Bucks, are you doing this again? Are you blitzing in game 3, knowing that this is the result?
You're just telling your defense to actually make the right choices. Because this goes back to what I was saying initially. The players did not treat it like a playoff game. Like, the number of times where Bobby just didn't rotate, or AJ didn't rotate, or Chris didn't sync, it's like they haven't seen their defense beaten. They've just seen their players not execute it.
Samson, are you doing this again in game 3?
I want to be switching more often.
Yeah,
now,
that's where
like,
I'm at too.
This is the thing that you can never, like, as an analyst, this is why coaches are coaches, analysts are analysts. A coach knows how gassed guys are getting. A coach is talking to those guys. A coach is having the conversation with his staff and with his players in between games. Like, how many possessions can we reasonably get away with switching? How many possessions can we ask guys to, like, step out? Because switching is really tough for bigs, like, repeatedly. It's like stepping out, backtracking, you know, and especially Tyrese, like, you might be like going back and forth. There's a lot of stop and start to it. But if I want to play what I think is the best scheme decision for the Bucks and at the expense of the Pacers, I'm switching. And I'm asking a wide variety of Bucks to, like, chop those feet, baby. Shuffle the puppies. I
do want to add, blitzing scored 2 points per possession. Switching in game 2 allowed 1.9.
What was the do we know the volume of both?
I think it was 10.
They basically flipped. They had, like, a third of their picks were switched in game 1 and maybe 10% were blitzed. And then they went to a third were blitzed in game 2 and 10% were switched.
So we have a lot from game 1, a decent amount of volume that switching works. And from game 2, we have a decent amount of volume that blitzing doesn't. I'd still lean switching. And also just because of the points over the course
of the season. Are these just on the screens with Miles, or is this overall? Like, in overall. Screen? Yeah, I think that might be part of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an important factor.
Because Miles and Siakam had some really nice ISO buckets after switches in game 2. Like, and that I think is fine. And I initially wrote that the Bucks should be switching a lot more. Like, I agree that switching is probably what they want the bulk of their coverage to be. But I don't think blitzing was necessarily, like, never tried again. I think they can still blitz, just a lot less. And guys need to know what they're doing. But that's true for all coverages, right? Switching wasn't particularly good either. That was my only point.
From the Milwaukee point of view, a lot of these mistakes that they're making are because they want to guard the paint. 52 points in the paint for the Pacers. Do you think, like, that's sometimes scheme, sometimes mistakes come from the Pacers push early and often. The Pacers are getting, like, cross matches. The Pacers are bludgeoning the rim. Bobby Portis, instead of, like, going out to Tyrese on that one possession, he's sinking back to the paint because he's like, not again. Do you think that like those types of things permeate in game, or do you think that's probably not the case?
Partially, but there were some moments where Portis was like the help and just wasn't there. Wasn't in the paint. He was just standing in the corner. You know, the clips that you showed earlier showed
nobody
Chris
puts
not
Bobby in the
down.
corner. Nice.
Well, it's just like I don't know if the mistakes were because they had a priority in mind. I think it was just like
guys can make mistakes.
Yeah, I couldn't find a consistent through line between the defensive errors that I saw.
I think too much of it was relying on them to make reads. Like the play that I showed about Bobby Portis, like what is your decision going into that? Are you deciding we're going to pick and roll peel switch with a low man, therefore the low man knows I step up, I meet Miles, Bobby peels to the next nearest person and everybody else rotates? Or is Bobby supposed to pursue and get back in front of Miles? It looked on that play like he had no idea which one he was supposed to be doing. I think that there kind of has to be a clear determination. And I don't think that defense is always best when it's predictable, but it's better executed when your players know what exactly it is that they're supposed to be doing within it. But I do think that this is a somewhat interesting talking point because, Samson, you did a mailbag last year. I was not part of it, but I did submit a question to you in which I asked, in their most ideal forms, which is the most difficult to guard? The rim roll, the short roll, or the pick and pop? To which point Lewis DM'd me and gave me his answer ahead of time. You answered the question on the podcast. Based on everything we just talked about, would you change that answer now?
No.
You still don't agree with me that the short roll in its most ideal form is the most difficult of those three to guard. I need you to explain your point on this.
Rim run, baby.
Against pristine drop coverage, you're still picking a rim roll. Like it's Drew Holiday and it's Brook Lopez. You still think that the rim roll is the most difficult thing to guard?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I think NBA players with downhill momentum is everything. The Rockets would have much preferred to let Harden take that step downhill and play that cat and mouse game than they would have being blitzed and leaving it in the hands of someone else. I think the best pick and roll ball handler paired with the best pick and roll rim runner is more dangerous than having the ball handler taken out of the play.
Who's the best rim runner? Who's the best rim runner in the NBA?
Like maybe it's AD. Maybe. Yeah, probably. Is that like AD is good at
if AD is the best rim runner against the best drop coverage, why do I need to involve a tag defender?
You might not.
Against the best short roller, I have to involve a third defender.
But here's the thing. You're probably going over, right? Unlike the pick and roll.
I think you're going to blitz it. If it's the most ideal form, you're going to blitz the ball handler. Like the most ideal form would be Steph and Jokic.
Short roll.
Yeah, you're going to blitz it. It's because Steph and Jokic.
So, are we? If we're having a rim run, I'm assuming it's not being blitzed, right?
I'm talking about the most ideal short roll. I have to involve a third defender. I don't have to involve a third defender against the rim run. Why do I have to?
Well, you can still lose that possession, though, even if that third defender isn't there. Like, what I'm saying is the same reason why I love empty side actions, mono-y-mono, or two mono-y-mono. Those mono. Anyway, but basically what I'm thinking is, like, I love classic rim running, pick and roll ball handling, because typically it empowers the ball handler. Short roll doesn't empower the ball handler. And I have so little reverence for 99% of big men that that's
not what we're talking about. We're talking about the most ideal short roller, who is Jokic.
I would rather the best pick and roll ball handler. Like I would rather that guy have the ball going downhill and ask him to beat like the 2-on-1. That's what I want to see. That's what I'm betting on.
I just think the pick and pop I can take away and I can switch it. The rim run I can potentially defend 2 versus 2. The short roll I have to involve a third defender and I'm putting the defense into rotation and it causes confusion.
You're not defending 2 versus 2 on that pick and roll. No way is my best ball handler letting it be 2v2. And also the thing about the short roll.
Lopez and Drew did all year without tagging last year. 21-22, they were one of the best.
You can literally look at the numbers. They don't involve taggers that often.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying you don't need the third defender. That's fine. I'm not looking for the man advantage. Like the best plays, and this is also the short roll thing, is like you need to involve the team. You're saying the ideal short form. I get to pick Jokic. They weren't fully weaponized until it was also Aaron Gordon, until it was also Michael Porter Jr., until it was also Jamal Murray. It's a 5-man action that has to operate in concert with one another. The 2-man action, 2v2, pick and roll ball handler, and really great rim running big, I trust those 2 fantastic players to be self-contained and to make that play consistently, rather than leaving it up to a 5-man action in the short roll where everybody has to be in lockstep to make the right play. It's not just Jokic in the middle. It's the other guys making themselves available, whether they're lifting up as a guy cuts, whether they're being the guy who collapses it, whatever the defensive response is. I would rather leave it in my two best players, my elite rim runner and my elite ball handler, to go get me a bucket in pick and roll with a rim runner and ball handler. That's my thoughts.
I
Now
think
we can disagree, of course.
We're going to disagree. We definitely disagree, because I think anytime you can get the ball in the middle of the floor and put a defense into rotation with an odd man advantage, the defense is in trouble.
I think that the just straight up pick and roll, even without a tag, is like a lot of times you're getting into the middle of the floor with a man advantage, with a ball handler. Like you get.
I don't think you are against the most ideal drop coverage, though.
Definitely sometimes you are. Offense is better than defense. And the best offensive players, that's they're going to get to those spots. We disagree. That's okay. But yeah, that's my answer for sure. I'm also a point guard. So
this also points to every time I've hooped with you, which is a lot of times.
Did you seriously just pull the card of I've done this before?
No. I'm saying I have a small brain, anecdotal. That's what I'm saying. Where I'm like, I trust the guard. This is a baseball thing where ex-hitters are always like, pitchers can't do anything. Those guys are idiots. They're such babies. And pitchers are like, hitters can't hit anything. Those guys are such idiots. Yeah.
Also, it goes back to your absolute preference for just like the biggest, strongest approach to basketball.
Yes.
Like every player that you've ever been like, that guy's awesome. He's just like the biggest player that you see in the gym. Which is rim runners are bigger and taller and faster and stronger than short rollers. I think that's the real reason that you prefer.
Jokic can also roll, you know? Anyway, interesting.
Back to the Milwaukee Bucks and the conversation. I think that this kind of hinges on whether Giannis can come back and play. Because if Giannis plays, you're going to put him most likely on Miles, and then the switching becomes more feasible, in my opinion, than what it currently is for Milwaukee's current position. And then I think that you do blitz less, because if Miles is the screener, you're going to be switching more. But to Lewis's point, in the second quarter, after Miles had made some of these reads, they did switch it, and Miles immediately punished Patrick Beverley in the post. They got him the ball. He scored. So we'll have to see how the Pacers would handle that if they do end up making that adjustment. But overall, do you have any other takes from this specific game on either the Bucks or the Pacers side that either one of you wanted to touch on or talk about?
I actually was encouraged from a Bucks perspective. Outside of the fourth quarter collapse, which was just like momentum feeding momentum, I thought Milwaukee could not have played a lesser game. They left so much on the rim, and that leading on the rim led to Indiana's transition game. Indiana made everything around the rim. There were so many, as we discussed, strategic mistakes. And yet it was a 4-point game or something early in the fourth quarter without Giannis as a solution to a lot of these strategic deficits. So, obviously the Pacers ran away with it in the end, and you can't just throw that out the window. I understand. But I think there was enough that went wrong that Milwaukee survived for me to take that game and say, I don't know if it's as strategically solved in one direction or the other.
I think I agree with what Lewis is saying. I think this game made me, more than anything else, feel confident that it's still a series when Giannis comes back. The Bucks are the higher seed. The Bucks have Giannis Antetokounmpo when they're healthy. They're supposed to beat the Pacers, but the Pacers, the way they played last game, makes you think like, oh, this could be a series. If this could be real, even with Giannis there, this could be fun. But more than that, watching Dame pull up the way he has been, because he hasn't really done it that much this season at this level. We're talking about like changing the pickup point routinely on where he's grabbing it. These throw ahead dribbles where he has to grab it earlier because of who's stepping up. And instead of like throw ahead dribble, gather right in the pocket, go up. We're talking about a guy who has to like reach and grab it earlier, get his feet under him quicker, and like bang it 1 foot earlier than he wanted to. Like the level of shot making that he's been able to bring to this series is insane. And it's been a real treat to watch because he has a couple easy looks every game. But as far as like beyond the arc, I don't know what his expected shot percentage is beyond the arc so far in the series. but he's been gangbusters. It's been absolutely insane, which is like, from a basketball point of view, that rocks. It's been awesome to watch the throw ahead into the gather and then the 3-pointer.
Would you change anything against him if you're the Pacers?
Now, I don't think he's going to shoot like this the whole series. I'm still trying to get him. I want that throw ahead to be picked up at 22 feet. That's what I want. I don't know. It's maybe I expect too much of like Miles, Pascal, Jalen plus guard to make sure that he's not operating between 23 and 27 feet, which he has been. I'm trying to make him operate between like 22 and 16. I want to change that like piece of the floor that his throw ahead gets into. But that throw ahead can lead to driving lanes if you don't play that right. I keep doing it. I keep seeing if he can meet the moment like that, because I bet Bucks fans right now are like, how does he keep doing it? You know, like, this is crazy shot making. Even Brook went 6-7 from downtown. The 3-point shooting, the Pacers looks are significantly better than the Bucks looks. The shot chart, as long as Giannis isn't back, the shot chart, it favors the Pacers in my opinion. So
without Giannis, Milwaukee needs an extra 5 possessions a game. It's just not feasible to match corner threes for above the break threes all game and expect to win.
I think that somewhat goes back to the offensive rebounding thing, because the Pacers themselves have talked about this in the past. If you crash harder, part of the reason why offensive rebounding rates are up across the NBA is because it helps your transition defense in many cases, because when you're crashing and you've given up enough of those, it's harder for you to leak out. You typically go with those players. So, I mean, I think that could be helpful to Milwaukee in that case in terms of winning the possession war at the very least.
Yeah.
But
how about you? Do you have any serious thoughts, Caitlin?
Not that we haven't already touched on. That's where I will wrap this up. These were the talking points that I had prepared and planned, and I'll just turn it over to you guys if you have any closing thoughts of what you want to say before we get out of here.
I believe we both prepared a poem.
Well, that's coming later. You've spoiled it. That's coming in a separate paywalled mailbag.
Oh, I was going to say, I will be podcasting with you after game 3. However, I won't have a piece after game 3 right after the game, because I forgot that I bought Blue Jays tickets to go watch Shohei Ohtani for the first time ever. So there will not be a Samson piece after game 3 for everybody who's been enjoying the immediacy of the like post-game column. Game 3 will not have it, so my apologies.
I mean, I will interrupt there and say that a lot of people have enjoyed your work. I don't know how often you've looked, and I know that you don't really enjoy compliments, but there has been a lot of compliments sent to me both privately and publicly in the comments section and through direct messages. So your work has been appreciated.
I've been trying not to look at stuff because, as we all know, there's a vacancy that has opened up in Raptors media, which means that hundreds of people who otherwise wouldn't be talking about me are now discussing how valid I am in my job, how good I am, whether I deserve good things or bad things. And so there's been an influx of my worth.
Did you just refer to working with me as bad things?
No, that's not what I'm saying. My worth as a worker has been started to be discussed openly. So yeah, I'm staying away.
Finally,
you mean you don't like it when there's 200 comment threads about you and your work decisions?
Yeah. Everyone just says like, just make a YouTube. It's like that'd be great for you, the consumer. Yes, if we all worked for free and like all grinded to try and make $8 a month, that would be great.
I mean, the funny thing is that you'll probably be happy to know that one of the comments was, in response to one of these post-game pods, I really hope Samson gets the opening available job.
No
at
way.
Raptors.
That's
It really was. It really was. So with that being said, I'll just continue to plug both of them. I think that Samson's work that he's doing here with me has been terrific, and the fact that he's taking his time out to watch these games and add all of his insights. Lewis's work, I think he's one of the most exquisite writers covering basketball. I always enjoy reading that. I still keep in mind, one of my favorite articles I've literally read is the one that you wrote about Gary Trent Jr. and the tulip market. Mainly because we have in common that we both studied history in college, so that one really resonated with me. But Lewis, thank you for your time. Do you have any closing thoughts as well?
No. I was more nervous to come on here than I ever have been for a podcast or radio spot, because you guys are just much deeper thinkers about the game itself than I am. So thank you for having me and for being kind and welcoming and for making it fun.
a deep thinker. I'm like grunting and moving while I talk. I'm like, oh yeah, he's a big tough guy. You know, I love basketball. I don't know about that.
If anything, I was the person that was outnumbered in the intelligence spectrum here, talking about basketball here. So
yeah, boo.
Everyone leave in the comments why the rim roll is better, please. That's where we'll leave this.
I love disagreements. I love them. Like these types of disagreements because it exists in the nuance. I like that disagreement a lot. I hope that it's something we can track for years.
Okay, then. So I don't think I'll probably bring it up again, to be honest. But that's it for all of us. We will be back after Game 3. Looking forward to that one. So talk to you again next time.